She cared for her sister's estate for 25 years, until she discovered the sister had tricked her into a loveless life of duty. Elena Carter knelt in the garden of her sister's estate, her hands buried deep in the earth as she pruned the overgrown rose bushes that flanked the walkway. Each cut of the shears felt cathartic, a small release for the weight she had been carrying for the past 25 years. The air was thick with the scent of blooming flowers, a rich tapestry of colors that had once brought her joy, but now felt like a reminder of everything she had sacrificed. Elena had devoted her life to caring for this estate after her sister Maya's tragic accident. To the outside world, Elena was the dutiful sister, the one who had stepped in to preserve Maya's legacy. But beneath the surface, Elena felt trapped in a life that had become an endless cycle of duty and expectation. Every flower planted, every room dusted, every meal prepared was a testament not just to her love for Maya, but to the life she had relinquished in favor of servitude. "Hey, Elena!" a voice called from the front of the house. It was Tessa, one of the local women who occasionally helped with the estate. "You're going to want to see this." Elena wiped the sweat from her brow and stood up, brushing the dirt from her hands onto her jeans. She made her way toward the front porch, where Tessa stood holding a large envelope, her brow furrowed in concern. "What is it?" Elena asked, her stomach tightening instinctively. "I found this in the mail," Tessa said, handing over the envelope. "It looks important." Elena took the envelope, her palms growing clammy as she recognized the return address. It was from a law firm in the city, one that she had never dealt with personally. Heart racing, Elena carefully opened the envelope, pulling out a neatly folded letter. As she unfolded it, her eyes scanned the words, her heart sinking with each line. "Dear Ms. Carter, we regret to inform you that your sister, Maya Thompson, has passed away and left behind an estate that requires immediate attention. Enclosed, you will find documents that pertain to the management of her estate, including the last will and testament." Elena's mind raced as she read on, but a sense of dread settled within her. She had thought the estate had been settled years ago after Maya's accident, but here it was, a reminder that there were still unfinished matters. She continued reading until a particular clause caught her eye, sending her heart plummeting. The will stated that Elena would inherit the estate on the condition that she remained single and dedicated her life to its upkeep. The words echoed in her mind like a haunting refrain. It felt like a trap, a manipulation from beyond the grave. Had Maya truly intended for Elena to live a life devoid of love, ambition, and personal happiness? "How could she?" Elena whispered, her voice barely audible. The realization felt like a punch to the gut, and she stumbled back slightly, her mind racing as she tried to comprehend the implications. Tessa placed a reassuring hand on Elena's shoulder. "Are you okay?" Elena's eyes filled with tears as she looked at her friend. "No, I'm not okay. I've devoted my life to this estate, sacrificed everything for Maya, and now I find out that it was all part of some twisted plan?" Tessa frowned, her brow creased in concern. "Maybe it's not as bad as it seems. You could still manage the estate and live your life." Elena shook her head, the weight of the letter heavy in her hands. "It's not just about the estate, Tessa. It's about what Maya expected from me. All these years, I thought I was honoring her memory, but maybe I was just a pawn in her game." As Tessa comforted her, Elena's mind spiraled. She had given up her dreams, her relationships, her aspirations, all in the name of duty. She had let the estate consume her, believing that she was honoring her sister's legacy. But now, it felt like a gilded cage, one that Maya had meticulously crafted for her. "Maybe you should talk to someone about this," Tessa suggested gently. "A lawyer or a counselor. You don't have to handle this alone." Elena nodded absently, her mind still tangled in the web of emotions that swirled around her. She knew Tessa was right. She needed to confront this truth, to understand what it meant for her future. But the thought of facing her family, of revealing Maya's manipulation, filled her with dread. That evening, after Tessa left, Elena returned to the garden, seeking solace in the familiar surroundings. The sun hung low, casting a warm glow over the flowers she had nurtured for years. Yet, as she knelt among the blooms, she felt a sense of betrayal creeping into her heart. The roses, once symbols of beauty, now served as a painful reminder of her sister's deceit. As night fell, Elena sat on the porch with the letter clutched in her hands. Staring out into the darkening sky, she felt a storm brewing within her, a mix of anger and sorrow that threatened to consume her. The estate, the garden, and her very life, all had been built on a foundation of lies. Suddenly, she heard a rustling sound from inside the house and turned to see a figure emerging from the shadows. It was Caleb Hayes, a childhood friend and the estate's groundskeeper. He had always been there, a silent support in the background, but tonight he seemed more present than ever. "Hey, Elena," Caleb said softly, his voice breaking the silence. "I saw the lights on and wanted to check on you." Elena forced a smile, grateful for his presence. "I'm okay," she lied. "Just a lot on my mind." Caleb stepped closer, concern etched across his face. "You know I'm here for you, right? If you need to talk or anything." Elena felt a pang of gratitude mixed with guilt. She had pushed away so many people in her life, focusing solely on the estate and the memory of Maya. But now, as she faced the truth about her sister's manipulation, she realized how much she had neglected her own needs. "I found a letter from Maya's lawyer," Elena admitted, her voice trembling. "She left behind a will that, well, it changes everything." Caleb's expression shifted from concern to curiosity. "What do you mean?" Elena took a deep breath, steeling herself to share the painful truth. "She left the estate to me, but under one condition. I have to remain single and dedicate my life to its upkeep. It feels like she wanted to trap me in a loveless existence." Caleb's brows furrowed in shock. That's unfair, Elena. You've given so much of yourself already. You deserve to live your life." "I thought I was honoring her memory," Elena said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "But now I feel like I've wasted my life on a duty that wasn't even mine to begin with." Caleb stepped closer, his presence grounding her. "You're not alone in this. You can still choose your path. You don't have to let Maya's will dictate your life." Elena looked up at him, feeling a flicker of hope ignite within her. "But what if I lose everything? What if I lose this estate?" "Maybe you need to lose it," Caleb replied gently. "Maybe it's time to reclaim your life and your happiness." As his words sank in, Elena felt a rush of clarity wash over her. She had spent too long living in the shadow of her sister's expectations, sacrificing her dreams for a legacy that no longer felt like hers. I need to confront this, she said firmly, wiping her tears away. I need to figure out what living for myself truly means. As the stars began to twinkle overhead, Elena felt a sense of determination swell within her. It was time to take control of her life, to confront the truth about her sister's manipulation and reclaim her identity. The estate, the garden, and everything she had built were part of her story, but they would not define her future. The following morning, Elena Carter woke up with a newfound sense of clarity, though anxiety still flickered in her stomach like a live wire. The sun streamed through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, a stark contrast to the turmoil that had unfolded in her mind. She had spent the previous evening contemplating the implications of Maya's will, and the weight of the revelations felt heavier than ever. After a quick breakfast, Elena decided it was time to take action. She needed to confront the reality of her situation head on. No more hiding behind the facade of duty or suppressing her feelings in the name of loyalty. She grabbed the letter from her sister's lawyer and tucked it into her bag, determined to seek legal advice before making any decisions. Elena drove to the downtown law office, her pulse quickening as she parked outside. The building was imposing, a stark contrast to the warmth of her garden. As she entered, the receptionist greeted her with a friendly smile, but Elena felt like an imposter in this world of suits and polished floors. "Hi, I have an appointment with Ms. Patel," Elena said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Of course, Ms. Carter. She'll be with you shortly. Please have a seat," the receptionist replied, gesturing to a row of chairs. Elena sat down, fidgeting with the edge of her bag. She glanced around the waiting room, taking in the framed diplomas and legal accolades that adorned the walls. A knot tightened in her stomach as she thought about the conversation she was about to have. What if the lawyer confirmed her worst fears? What if Maya's will truly locked her into a life of servitude? After what felt like an eternity, a woman in a sharp navy suit emerged from an office. "Elena Carter," she called, her voice confident and commanding. Elena stood up, smoothing her dress as she approached the lawyer. "That's me." "Hello, I'm Nia Patel. Thank you for coming in today. Let's discuss your sister's estate," Nia said, leading Elena into her office. The room was sleek and modern, filled with bookshelves lined with legal texts. Once seated, Nia opened a file on her desk and glanced at the contents. "I've reviewed the will your sister left behind. It's quite unusual, to say the least." Elena braced herself, her heart pounding. "What do you mean?" Nia leaned forward, her expression serious. "Maya's will stipulates that you inherit the estate, but under the condition that you remain single and devote your life to its upkeep. This is a significant obligation that could affect your personal life and choices moving forward." Elena inhaled sharply, the weight of the words settling heavily on her shoulders. "I know. I found it last night, and it feels manipulative." Nia nodded, her gaze steady. "It does raise ethical questions. The law allows for such stipulations, but it's your choice whether you want to adhere to them. You could contest the will if you believe it was drafted under undue influence or duress." The words hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Contesting the will meant challenging the memory of her sister, but the thought of living under Maya's expectations for the rest of her life felt unbearable. "I need to think about it," Elena said slowly, her voice trembling with uncertainty. "I've already spent so many years fulfilling her legacy. I don't want to feel trapped any longer." "Take your time," Nia advised, her tone gentle. But remember, you have the right to define your own life. Maya's decisions shouldn't dictate your happiness. Elena left the law office feeling both empowered and terrified. As she drove back to the estate, her mind raced with the implications of contesting the will. Would it be worth the pain it could cause? Could she truly let go of the life she had built, even if it had always felt like a prison? Arriving at the estate, Elena felt a pang of nostalgia wash over her. The sprawling gardens, the historic home, it all held memories of happier times. But as she stepped inside, a wave of melancholy washed over her. All the laughter, all the joy, had been replaced by an oppressive silence that echoed through the halls. That evening, Elena decided to gather her family for a meeting. She needed to confront the truth, to reveal the contents of Maya's will, and see how they could collectively navigate the aftermath. As she set the dining table, her hands trembled with anticipation. She wasn't sure how her family would react, or if they would understand the depths of her struggle. When the family arrived, the atmosphere was charged with unspoken tension. Caleb was there, offering a supportive smile, but even he could sense the heaviness in the air. Elena took a deep breath and called them to sit down. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I wanted to talk about something important regarding Maya's estate." Her family exchanged glances, the room buzzing with curiosity. "What's going on?" asked Jackson Reed, her brother-in-law, leaning forward with concern. Elena pulled out the envelope from Maya's lawyer and placed it on the table. "I found this will that Maya left behind. It has some surprising stipulations." As she explained the contents, the room fell into stunned silence. Each family member absorbed the news differently, some with shock, others with disbelief. "This can't be right," Jackson said, shaking his head. "Maya wouldn't want you to live like that." "Exactly," Elena replied, her voice rising with emotion. "But it's what she left behind. It's like she wanted to control my life even after she was gone." "Maybe she thought she was protecting you," suggested Nia, her sister. "But it sounds like a terrible burden." Elena felt a swell of anger rising within her. "It is a burden. I've spent 25 years caring for this estate, and now I find out it was all part of some twisted plan?" Tessa interjected, her tone soothing. "You have the power to decide what happens next, Elena. Contesting the will could free you from this obligation." Elena looked around the table, her heart racing. "I'm terrified of what that could mean, but I can't keep living for someone else's expectations. I've sacrificed everything." The room erupted into a heated discussion, family members debating the implications of Maya's will. Some argued for honoring Maya's memory, while others supported Elena's desire for freedom. The tension escalated, voices rising as emotions ran high. In the midst of the chaos, Caleb remained silent, watching Elena with a knowing gaze. She could feel his support, a grounding presence amidst the storm. "Enough!" Elena finally shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. "We need to stop pretending that this is easy. Maya's will has put us all in a difficult position, but I refuse to let her control my life any longer." The room fell silent, and Elena's heart raced as she realized the weight of her words. She had finally found her voice, and it felt liberating. "Whatever decision I make, I want you all to understand that it comes from a place of love for Maya, but also for myself. I deserve to live my life and pursue my happiness." As the murmurs of agreement began to rise, Elena felt a sense of hope rekindling within her. The confrontation had been difficult, but it had also opened the door for honest dialogue and healing. In the days that followed, Elena began to reevaluate her life and the estate. She sought guidance from Nia Patel about contesting the will, discussing the legal ramifications and the potential emotional fallout. Each conversation brought her closer to understanding her own desires and the life she wanted to reclaim. As she worked in the garden, tending to the flowers that had once brought her joy, Elena felt a sense of empowerment growing within her. The estate, once a symbol of duty, was beginning to transform into a canvas for her own dreams. The path ahead would undoubtedly be fraught with challenges, but Elena was ready to confront them. She had spent too long living for someone else, and now it was her turn to embrace her own identity and happiness. The sun rose the next day, casting a warm glow over the estate as Elena Carter stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her blouse. She felt a mix of determination and anxiety bubbling within her, an unshakable reminder of the confrontation with her family just days ago. The decision to contest Maya's will loomed over her like a shadow, but she knew she could no longer live in the confines of her sister's expectations. After a quick breakfast, Elena gathered her notebook and the will, preparing for a meeting with Nia Patel. Together, they had agreed to discuss the next steps in contesting Maya's will, and Elena felt a surge of purpose as she made her way to the law office. As she drove through the vibrant streets, Elena noticed the world around her. Families walking their dogs, children playing in the park, couples holding hands. Each scene felt foreign to her. They represented a life she had longed for, but had pushed aside for the sake of duty. She parked outside the law office, taking a deep breath before stepping inside. "Good morning, Ms. Carter." The receptionist greeted her with a bright smile as she entered. "Ms. Patel is ready for you now." Elena nodded and followed the receptionist to Nia's office, her heart racing with anticipation. When she entered, Nia was reviewing documents on her desk, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Hi, Elena," Nia said, looking up and gesturing for her to take a seat. "I've been reviewing your sister's will in detail. It's quite complex." Elena settled into the chair, trying to quell the fluttering in her stomach. "What did you find?" "It seems that Maya's stipulations are more than just about remaining single and dedicating your life to the estate. There are also clauses about her legacy and expectations regarding how the estate is maintained," Nia explained, her tone serious. Elena felt her heart sink. "What do you mean by expectations?" Nia flipped through the pages before continuing. Maya included specific guidelines about how the estate should be run, the types of events to be held here, and even the manner in which you should present yourself to the public. It's almost as if she wanted to curate an image of you as the perfect caretaker. Elena's frustration boiled over. "She was trying to control me even after her death. I can't believe this." Nia nodded sympathetically. "It's understandable to feel that way. The good news is that you have a strong case to contest these stipulations. If you can prove undue influence, or that the will does not reflect Maya's true intentions, you may be able to have it overturned." Elena felt a flicker of hope. "How do I do that?" "We'll need to gather evidence and potentially interview family members or friends who can attest to your relationship with Maya," Nia replied. "We'll also look into any prior drafts of the will to see if there were changes made that suggest manipulation." Elena's mind raced with the possibilities, but another thought nagged at her. What if I do contest it, but my family doesn't support me? What if they side with Maya's wishes? Nia leaned forward, her expression earnest. "You have to remember that this is your life, your happiness at stake. You deserve to live authentically, regardless of how others react. It's important to focus on what you want." Elena nodded, the weight of Nia's words sinking in. "You're right. I need to do this for myself." After their meeting concluded, Elena returned to the estate, her heart a mix of resolve and trepidation. She spent the afternoon in the garden, pulling weeds and trimming the hedges. The physical labor provided a momentary distraction, but the reality of her situation loomed large. She was on the brink of a confrontation, not just with Maya's legacy, but with her own family. As evening approached, Elena prepared for another family dinner, a routine that had felt comforting, but now carried an air of tension. She knew she had to reveal her decision to contest the will, and the thought filled her with dread. Would they understand? Would they support her? The dining room was set with candles flickering softly, creating an intimate atmosphere. As her family gathered around the table, the usual banter was replaced by an uneasy silence. Elena could feel the weight of their gazes on her, and it made her stomach churn. "Thanks for making dinner, Elena," Tessa said, trying to break the tension. "It smells amazing." "Thank you," Elena replied, forcing a smile as she served the food. "I wanted to talk about something important tonight." Jackson looked up from his plate. Concern etched across his face. "Is everything okay?" Elena took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. "I've made a decision regarding Maya's will." The room fell silent, and all eyes were on her as she gathered her courage. "I'm going to contest the will." Shock rippled through the room. "What do you mean?" Nia asked, her voice rising in disbelief. "I found out that there are stipulations about remaining single and dedicating my life to the estate. It feels like Maya wanted to control my life even after her death," Elena said, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "That's absurd," Jackson exclaimed. "Maya wouldn't want that for you." "Exactly," Tessa chimed in. "You've given up so much already. You deserve to live your own life." Elena felt a wave of relief wash over her as her family rallied around her. "I just can't keep living for her expectations. I need to reclaim my life." "But what if they don't take it well?" Nia cautioned. "You could face backlash from other family members." "I'm willing to face that," Elena replied, her voice firm. "I have to do this for me." As the conversation continued, Elena felt the weight of her decision settle over her. It was a pivotal moment, one that would shape her future. She could feel the support of her family bolstering her resolve, but there was still a nagging fear in the back of her mind. That night, as Elena lay in bed, she replayed the conversation in her mind. The support she received ignited a spark of hope in her heart, but the uncertainty of what lay ahead still loomed large. Would contesting the will really free her from Maya's grasp, or would it lead to further conflict and division within the family? The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions as Elena focused on preparing for the legal battle ahead. She met with Nia regularly, gathering evidence and discussing strategies. Each meeting left her feeling more empowered, as if she was shedding the layers of duty that had suffocated her for so long. However, not everyone in the family was supportive. Some relatives reached out, expressing disappointment and urging her to reconsider her decision. The pressure weighed heavily on Elena, but she reminded herself of her goals: to reclaim her identity and live authentically. As the date for the legal proceedings approached, Elena felt a mix of excitement and fear. She had come so far, but the reality of standing up against her sister's legacy was daunting. On the eve of the proceedings, she sat in the garden once more, surrounded by the blossoms that had been her refuge. It was then that she spotted Caleb walking toward her, a curious expression on his face. "Hey, I thought I'd find you here," he said, taking a seat beside her. Elena smiled faintly. "Just trying to gather my thoughts." "You know you're making the right choice," Caleb said, his tone steady. "You deserve to live your life the way you want." I know, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. But it's still hard. I loved Maya, and it feels like I'm betraying her. Caleb's gaze softened. You're not betraying her. You're choosing yourself, and that's important. Sometimes love means letting go of expectations. As they talked, the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. Elena felt a sense of peace wash over her, as if the garden itself was offering her support. She knew that tomorrow would be a pivotal moment, one that could change the course of her life. I'm ready, she said finally, a newfound strength filling her voice. I have to do this. Caleb smiled, and for a moment, Elena allowed herself to feel hope, a glimmer of light breaking through the shadows of her past. Tomorrow, she would fight for her freedom. The morning sun rose with a crisp clarity that Elena Carter had not felt in years. As she prepared for the legal proceedings, her heart raced with anticipation and anxiety. Today was the day she would confront the legacy of her sister Maya and fight for her own life, a life she had put on hold for far too long. Elena took a moment to breathe deeply, centering herself as she adjusted her blazer in front of the mirror. The reflection staring back at her was a woman ready to reclaim her narrative, not just as Maya's sister, but as Elena Carter, a woman with dreams and aspirations of her own. She grabbed her bag, which held the crucial documents and the will, and headed out the door. The drive to the courthouse was a blur of thoughts, fears, and hopes. Elena replayed her strategy in her mind, rehearsing the points she wanted to make about Maya's manipulative control and the unrealistic expectations that came with the estate. She parked, took a deep breath, and stepped out into the bustling world around her. As she entered the courthouse, the atmosphere felt charged with a mix of urgency and solemnity. She navigated through the hallways, her heels clicking against the polished floor, until she reached the courtroom designated for her case. Moments later, Nia Patel joined her, a reassuring presence amidst the chaos. Are you ready? Nia asked, her voice calm and steady. I think so, Elena replied, though uncertainty flickered in her mind. I just want to make sure my voice is heard. You will be, Nia assured her. Just focus on sharing your truth. As they entered the courtroom, Elena's heart raced. The room was filled with an array of emotions: anxious relatives, curious onlookers, and a stark realization that today would not only affect her future, but also the family dynamics she had known her entire life. Elena took her seat, glancing at the opposing side. Her brother-in-law, Jackson Reed, sat with a pained expression on his face, while several other relatives were gathered around him, whispering among themselves. The tension in the air was palpable, a storm brewing beneath the surface. Court is now in session, the judge announced, a stern figure sitting at the front. We are here to discuss the validity of the last will and testament of Maya Thompson. Elena swallowed hard as the proceedings began. Nia stood to present their case, outlining the stipulations of the will, and arguing that Elena had been placed in a position of undue influence. She spoke confidently, detailing Elena's years of sacrifice and the emotional toll that Maya's stipulations had taken on her life. Elena felt her heart swell with pride as she listened, but it was quickly replaced by anxiety when the opposing counsel stood up to cross-examine her. Ms. Carter, the opposing attorney said, a sharp edge to his voice. Isn't it true that you cared for your sister's estate willingly, that you never expressed any desire to leave? Elena clenched her fists beneath the table, ready to defend herself. I did it out of love for my sister, she replied, her voice steady. But at what cost? I sacrificed my own happiness and dreams to uphold her legacy. Sacrifice or obligation? The attorney pressed. You chose to live here, in this estate, for all these years. Isn't it true that you found purpose in it? I found purpose in caring for something that was important to her, Elena retorted. But that doesn't mean it was right for me. Maya's will traps me in a life I never wanted. The attorney smirked slightly, sensing a weakness. And yet, you never attempted to contest the will until now. Why is that? Elena took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Because I was afraid. I thought that honoring my sister's memory meant living for her, rather than for myself. But that's not living at all. The courtroom was silent. Every eye focused on Elena as she spoke from the heart. She could feel the tension shift, the air thick with the realization that she was reclaiming her narrative. Your Honor, Nia interjected, standing again. I would like to call a witness to the stand. Caleb Hayes, a friend and groundskeeper of the estate. Elena's heart leapt as Caleb stepped forward, his presence grounding her. He took the stand and was sworn in, his gaze steady as he faced the courtroom. Caleb, Nia began. Can you describe your relationship with Elena and your observations regarding her time spent caring for the estate? Caleb nodded. Elena has devoted her life to maintaining the estate. She's poured her heart and soul into it, but I've also seen the toll it's taken on her. She sacrificed so much for a legacy that wasn't her own. Did Maya ever express her wishes for Elena's future? Nia asked. Caleb hesitated for a moment, choosing his words carefully. Maya was ambitious, and she wanted to leave a mark on the world, but she never discussed her will with me. I believe she wanted Elena to continue her legacy, but it became a burden. Elena felt a swell of emotions as she listened to Caleb's words. He was speaking the truth, and it felt liberating to hear someone else acknowledge the sacrifices she had made. Thank you, Caleb, Nia said before turning to the judge. I have no further questions. As Caleb stepped down, Elena felt a renewed sense of strength. She had allies standing beside her, ready to support her in this fight for her own life. In the following minutes, the proceedings continued, and the tension in the courtroom escalated as family members expressed their opinions. Some wanted to uphold Maya's wishes, while others began to see Elena's side. The emotional weight of the situation was palpable, and Elena felt her heart racing with every word spoken. Finally, it was Elena's turn to take the stand. She stood up, her legs trembling slightly, and walked to the front. The eyes of the courtroom were fixed on her, and she could feel the weight of their gazes. Ms. Carter, the judge said, please share your perspective on the will and your relationship with your sister. Elena took a deep breath, grounding herself in the moment. Maya was my sister and my best friend, but her expectations became suffocating. I dedicated my life to this estate, believing I was honoring her memory, but it turned into a prison. The judge nodded, encouraging her to continue. I thought that sacrificing my happiness was the only way to show my love for her. When I found the stipulations in the will, it shattered everything I believed. I realized that I've been living for someone else's legacy instead of my own. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom, and Elena could see her family's expression shifting. Some looked conflicted. Others were beginning to understand the depth of her struggle. I want to honor Maya's memory, but I cannot do that by sacrificing my own life. I deserve the chance to pursue my own dreams, she concluded, her voice steady. The judge leaned back, contemplating her words. Thank you, Ms. Carter. Your sentiments have been noted. As Elena returned to her seat, A sense of relief washed over her. She had spoken her truth, and it felt liberating. But the battle was far from over. The opposing counsel would likely counter with emotional appeals, attempting to sway the judge's decision. As the day wore on, the courtroom drama unfolded, with testimonies and arguments exchanged. The emotional toll weighed heavily on Elena, but she remained resolute, knowing she had the support of her family and Caleb. Finally, the judge called for a recess, giving everyone a moment to regroup. Elena stepped outside the courtroom with Caleb, feeling the tension of the proceedings start to dissipate. "Do you think they understood?" Elena asked, rubbing her temples as a headache began to form. "I think you made an impact," Caleb replied, his voice reassuring. "You stood up for yourself, and that's what matters." Elena nodded, grateful for his support. "I just hope it's enough." As they stood in the hallway, the weight of the situation settled back over her. She had shared her truth, but the outcome remained uncertain. Would the judge see the manipulation behind Maya's will, or would the family's desire to uphold her legacy prevail? "Whatever happens, you're not alone in this," Caleb said, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Thank you, Caleb. I really appreciate everything," she replied, her heart swelling with gratitude. As Elena gathered her thoughts, she knew she had to prepare for the next round of arguments. This was not just a battle for the estate. It was a fight for her own identity, her own happiness, and her future. With determination burning in her heart, Elena returned to the courtroom, ready to face whatever came next. As the gavel struck, signaling the end of the recess, Elena Carter felt a wave of anxiety wash over her. The courtroom, filled with family members, friends, and onlookers, buzzed with a tense energy. She could sense the weight of expectations bearing down on her, but she stood firm, ready to see this through. Today would be the day she either reclaimed her life or faced the consequences of her sister's manipulative grip. Nia Patel stood, preparing to present their case once more. "Your Honor," Nia began, her voice steady and confident, "we have demonstrated that the stipulations within Maya Thompson's will create an undue burden on Ms. Carter. We will now provide additional evidence that underscores the emotional impact this has had on her life." Elena glanced around the room, spotting Jackson Reed's furrowed brow. He was Maya's husband, and Elena could see the conflict etched on his face. It was clear he struggled with the idea of contesting the will, torn between loyalty to his deceased wife and support for Elena. "Your Honor, I would like to call my next witness to the stand," Nia continued, her eyes scanning the room. "Freya Lawson, a longtime friend of the Thompson family." Freya, a vibrant woman with a warm smile, took the stand. "Thank you for having me," she said, her voice brightening the room. "I've known Maya for decades. We were close friends, and I often witnessed her relationship with Elena." Elena listened intently as Freya spoke. "Elena has always been devoted to her sister. I remember countless times when she sacrificed her own needs to support Maya, whether it was helping her with events or managing the estate. Did Maya ever express her wishes for Elena's future?" Nia asked, guiding Freya's testimony. Freya hesitated. Maya was ambitious, and while she wanted to succeed, she never discussed her will or expectations for Elena's life with me. I believe she loved her sister deeply, but her desire for control overshadowed that love. "Thank you, Freya," Nia said, smiling at her. "No further questions, Your Honor." As Freya stepped down, Elena felt a sense of gratitude. It was comforting to hear someone else acknowledge the complexities of her relationship with Maya, But she knew that the real test was yet to come. The opposing counsel stood again, ready to cross-examine Freya. Ms. Lawson, you claim to have witnessed Elena's sacrifices, but can you honestly say that Elena ever expressed a desire to leave the estate? Isn't it true that she found purpose in caring for it? Freya's expression shifted. Elena did find purpose, but it was always tied to her sister's legacy. She felt obligated to maintain it, not because she wanted to, but because she believed that was what Maya would have wanted. The attorney pressed further, clearly trying to undermine Elena's position. So you're saying that Elena's devotion was born out of obligation, not choice? Freya squared her shoulders. I believe it was a mix of both. But the point is, Elena deserves to choose her own path now. As the tension in the room escalated, Elena felt a surge of determination. Freya's words resonated with her, reinforcing the idea that she had the right to decide her own future. It was time to reclaim her narrative. Your Honor, Elena said, rising from her seat, I would like to make a statement. The judge looked surprised but nodded, granting her permission. Elena stepped forward, her heart racing as she faced the courtroom. I've lived in the shadow of my sister's expectations for too long. I thought that by honoring her memory, I was doing the right thing. But I've come to realize that true honor comes from living authentically. The room fell silent, and Elena could feel the weight of her family's gaze upon her. Maya wanted to create a legacy, but at what cost? I've sacrificed my happiness, my relationships, and my identity to uphold a version of life that wasn't even mine. Tears brimmed in her eyes, but she held them back. I loved my sister, but love doesn't mean living in a cage. It's time to break free from this legacy of obligation and create my own path. The judge nodded, clearly moved by her words. Thank you, Ms. Carter. Your sentiments are noted. As Elena took her seat, she felt an unexpected sense of relief. She had spoken her truth, and it resonated throughout the courtroom. But the opposing counsel was not done. Your Honor, I'd like to remind the court that Maya's will clearly outlines her wishes. While Ms. Carter may desire freedom, we must honor the intentions of the deceased, the attorney argued, his voice dripping with condescension. But those intentions were rooted in control, Nia countered, her voice rising. Maya's love for her sister should not come with strings attached. If anything, it should encourage Elena to pursue her own happiness. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs, family members exchanging glances. The tension was palpable, and Elena could sense the divide beginning to form. As the proceedings wore on, Elena's resolve began to waver. What if her family turned against her? What if Maya's legacy was too powerful to break? The day dragged on, with testimonies and arguments interspersed with heated exchanges. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows in the courtroom, Elena felt fatigue settle in. She had fought hard, but the battle was far from over. Finally, the judge called for a recess, allowing everyone to collect their thoughts. Elena stepped outside for a moment of fresh air, needing to clear her mind. As she stood on the courthouse steps, she spotted Caleb leaning against a nearby pillar, looking concerned. How are you holding up? He asked, stepping forward. I don't know, Caleb. I feel like I'm fighting against a tidal wave, Elena admitted, running a hand through her hair. What if they don't understand? They will, Caleb said firmly. You've done everything you can to convey your truth. You're standing up for yourself, and that's what matters. Elena took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words. I just wish it didn't feel so lonely. I thought my family would support me. They may need time to process this, Caleb replied gently. Change is hard for everyone, especially when it involves legacy and family dynamics. But you're not alone in this fight. As they stood together, Elena felt a flicker of hope. She had allies, people who believed in her, and she needed to focus on that. When the recess ended, Elena returned to the courtroom, her heart pounding. The judge resumed the proceedings, and she could feel the intensity returning. "Is the opposing counsel ready to present their case?"
"Sir," the judge asked. "Yes, Your Honor," the attorney replied, straightening his tie. "We will demonstrate that Maya Thompson's will reflects her true intentions and that Ms. Carter's claims are unfounded." Elena listened as the attorney presented a series of character witnesses, family members who spoke about Maya's dedication to her legacy. They painted her as a strong, ambitious woman who had only wanted the best for Elena. But as the testimonies continued, Elena felt a sense of detachment wash over her. She realized that the narrative being presented was one she no longer identified with. Yes, Maya had been ambitious, but that ambition had turned into control and manipulation, a truth that needed to be acknowledged. Finally, the opposing counsel rested their case, and the judge turned to Nia. "Ms. Patel, would you like to present your closing arguments?" Nia stood, exuding confidence. "Your Honor, we have demonstrated that Maya Thompson's will is a product of manipulation. It imposes undue burden on Ms. Carter, who has spent her life caring for the estate out of love for her sister. However, love should never come with conditions." Nia's voice rose with conviction. "Elena deserves the opportunity to live her life freely, without being shackled by the expectations of her sister's legacy. It's time to honor Maya's memory in a way that allows Elena to thrive, not just survive." The courtroom fell silent, the weight of Nia's words hanging in the air. Elena felt a surge of hope, coupled with an overwhelming sense of fear. Would the judge accept their argument? Would he see the truth behind the manipulation? As the judge prepared to deliver his ruling, Elena's heart raced. She held her breath, waiting for the moment that could change everything. "After careful consideration of the evidence presented," the judge began, "it is clear that the stipulations within Maya Thompson's will create an undue burden on Ms. Carter. While it is important to honor the intentions of the deceased, it is equally important to ensure that those intentions do not come at the expense of another's happiness." Elena's heart soared as the judge continued. "Therefore, I find that the stipulations regarding Ms. Carter's status and obligations to the estate are invalid. Ms. Carter will inherit the estate without those conditions." A wave of relief washed over Elena, and tears filled her eyes as the reality sank in. She had won. She could finally reclaim her life, free from the suffocating grasp of her sister's expectations. The courtroom erupted in murmurs, and Jackson's expression shifted from shock to disbelief. Some family members looked relieved, while others appeared angry, struggling to digest the judge's ruling. Elena turned to Nia, who smiled warmly at her. "You did it, Elena. You fought for your truth, and it paid off." As Elena embraced Nia, a flood of emotions washed over her. Relief, joy, and an overwhelming sense of liberation. She had fought hard for her freedom, not just from the estate, but from the long-held expectations that had kept her in a perpetual state of duty. The ruling echoed in her mind, a sweet melody of hope that promised a new beginning. But as the courtroom buzzed with conversation, Elena felt an undercurrent of tension. Jackson Reed stood at the back, his face a mix of shock and disappointment. The other family members were divided, some offering her congratulations, while others remained silent, grappling with the implications of the judge's decision. "Ms. Carter," the judge said, interrupting her thoughts, "please take a moment to consider how you would like to proceed with the estate moving forward. You have the opportunity to redefine your relationship with it." Elena nodded, the weight of his words sinking in. She had spent so many years adhering to the estate's demands that she had forgotten what it meant to live for herself. Now, it was her time to envision a future filled with possibility. As she stepped out of the courtroom, the cool air hit her like a splash of water, grounding her in the moment. Caleb was waiting for her, a broad smile on his face. "You did it, Elena. I knew you would." "Thank you, Caleb. I couldn't have done it without you," she replied, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Your support made all the difference." Elena took a deep breath, feeling lighter than she had in years. "I don't know what the future holds, but I'm ready to find out." In the days that followed, Elena began the process of redefining her life. She spent time in the garden, a sanctuary that had always been a source of joy for her. But now, instead of merely maintaining it for the sake of duty, she envisioned it as a space for her own growth and creativity. With the help of Tessa and Caleb, she organized community events in the garden, inviting neighbors and friends to share in the beauty of the space. They hosted art shows, gardening workshops, and even small concerts, transforming the estate into a vibrant hub of creativity. Each event breathed life into the estate, reminding Elena that it was not just a place of obligation, but a canvas for her dreams. As the seasons changed, so did Elena. She explored new hobbies, painting, writing, and even taking up photography. For the first time in decades, she allowed herself to embrace spontaneity, exploring the world outside the walls of the estate. The laughter of friends, the warmth of new connections, and the freedom to pursue her passions filled her life with a joy she had long forgotten. But as Elena flourished, she also had to confront the rifts that had emerged within her family. Jackson reached out several weeks after the ruling, requesting a meeting to discuss the fallout. Elena felt a mix of apprehension and hope as she agreed to meet him at a local cafe. When she arrived, Jackson was already seated, a coffee in hand and a solemn expression on his face. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," he said, his voice low. "I know this hasn't been easy for you, and it's been hard for all of us." Elena nodded, taking a seat across from him. "I didn't want to fight against my sister's wishes, but I had to reclaim my life. It wasn't fair to me." "I understand that now," Jackson replied, his gaze earnest. "Maya was ambitious, but I didn't realize how controlling she could be. I thought I was protecting her legacy by supporting the will." Elena felt a pang of empathy for him. "We all loved Maya, but we have to allow each other to live fully. I don't want to carry the burden of her expectations anymore." Jackson sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I've spoken with some of the family, and we all want to support you moving forward. We just need to find a way to heal." Elena smiled softly, feeling a flicker of hope. "I'd like that. I want to honor Maya's memory in a way that allows us all to grow, not be trapped by the past." As they talked, the tension began to ease, and they found common ground in their shared love for Maya. They discussed ways to celebrate her life, creating a foundation in her name that would support local artists and community projects. the very things Maya had once aspired to do. With each conversation, Elena felt the rifts in her family begin to mend. They were learning to accept the complexities of their relationships, rediscovering the love that had been overshadowed by duty and expectation. As the months turned into a year, Elena looked around at the thriving garden, now filled with laughter, art, and life. She had transformed the estate into a place of healing and connection, inviting friends and family to come together in celebration of love, creativity, and authenticity. One evening, as the sun set on the horizon, casting a golden hue over the garden, Elena hosted a gathering to celebrate the foundation they had established in Maya's memory. Friends and family filled the space, their laughter mingling with the sounds of music and joy. Elena stood at the center of it all, surrounded by the vibrant blooms she had nurtured. She felt a sense of peace wash over her, knowing that she had finally taken control of her life. The estate, once a symbol of obligation, was now a testament to her strength and resilience. As she raised her glass for a toast, the warmth of her family and friends enveloped her. To new beginnings, to authenticity, love, and the courage to live our lives fully. The crowd echoed her sentiments, and Elena felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She had escaped the confines of her sister's legacy, emerging into a world of her own making, a world where she could be herself, free from the shadows of the past. With each passing day, Elena continued to forge her path, embracing the freedom to dream, create, and live authentically. The estate had transformed into a sanctuary of love and growth, a place where family and friends could gather, celebrate, and heal. You've made it to the end. If you enjoyed this story, I am confident that you'll love the next one appearing on the screen now. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and please give this video a like. I'll see you in the next one.